Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. The next 10 minutes are inspired by an Instagram post and a Halloween costume. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the engine. My my first tutoring client was this tremendous older lady. She and her husband had crushed in business, and then at the ages, I think, of 50 and 60, had adopted a baby. And they were such doting parents. They were all about this kid, all in 100% of the time. And it was cool to see. And it was awesome to kind of get glimpses of what their life had been like this whole time, going incredibly successful, by the way, building their own business. The husband had come to the United States in his early 30s as a refugee, and he died a multi millionaire. I mean, really a classic, just American dream story. Very cool guy. And the mom of my student was equally cool. Had a disability and actually had become this phenomenal businesswoman. Even though it was kind of hard to understand what she was saying sometimes, she crushed. She had her inclinations. She was sharp as could be. Great business inclinations. But one of the things she did is she always embellished stories. And she was this tremendous storyteller. And she would get into these lengthy, elaborate explanations of what happened and what the seller did. She was a realtor. What the seller did and what the buyer did, and then like what this neighbor did, and all these things. And you're listening to it and you're like, oh my God, really? Like that happened? You're like, yes, that's what happened. And you come to find out later that it's like 98% embellished and not true. I mean, 2% is true, that she did sell this house and maybe the neighbor had picked up this piece of mail by accident, but it wasn't true that the neighbor had been stealing the mail, and that's why the seller was actually selling, and the FBI had to get involved because it was mail fraud. Like all of these things that she got into. I'd be like, what? Wait, what? The FBI came? She's like, yes, the FBI came to my open house. I'm like, oh my God, how could this be happening? She's like, I know. What are you going to do? And the FBI's there now, so like you got to deal with them, but I had to sell this house. Anyway, so she went into it, and this is not uncommon in the least. People embellish things. People embellish things all the time. And I think it's one of the things we're naturally inclined to just sweeten the pot a little bit, right? Like sometimes I tell people I've been tutoring for almost 17 years. Okay, in a couple months it'll be 17 years. But I tell people almost 17 years instead of saying I've been tutoring for 16 years. Or like, how old are you? I'm almost 27. Okay, well, you could have just said I'm 26. Like, people like to embellish just a little bit. And a lot of times it's kind of meaningless, but sometimes it holds a little bit of weight. And again, when you do get an impact, right, saying 16, almost 17 years of tutoring versus 16 years of tutoring doesn't have that much of an impact, but on social media, we see grand impacts. We see people using filters that make their faces, their bodies, their everything just look unbelievable. You're like, what? How is that a thing? In fact, they make them look so much better and they're so easy to use that social media posts have become a huge problem for young women. Because the standards of beauty, the standards have always been what the standards are, but when you all of a sudden see people around you that gaining all of this notoriety for these pictures that you can't quite tell, like at a glance you can't quite tell if they're filtered, and the vast majority of people don't even care if they are. They just like looking at something. And it's really upsetting to people. It's really upsetting, especially teenagers. They're like, I don't look like that. They're comparing what they actually look like to this fake version. I've been thinking about this for a long time. And it's kind of like, well, how do you get people out of this cycle? Like, even when I take a picture of myself, I can just hit a little button and it touches up my face. Not that I ever do, because who cares? Look at me. I mean, this is not an embellished version of Matt. So I don't care. Like, I'm not going to try to make myself look better. I've been married for almost 13 years. What does that mean, people? 12 years. So you have these major problems with people getting sucked into this whirlwind of BS social media. You have people with suicide rates skyrocketing. Like, this is a real problem. I think the solution, though, is to actually make the filters better. I was thinking about Halloween the other day, because people get dressed up like whatever. Dracula, Frankenstein. And I asked my students, I'm like, hey, when's the last time you actually got scared by a werewolf on Halloween? And the kids are like, never. I mean, when I was a little kid, but that's it. And we started talking about it. It's like the elaborate nature of some of these costumes. There are tutorials online on YouTube where you can make it look like you got this gaping hole in your wrist, like blood everywhere, these fangs. People have masks now that are phenomenal. I mean, people go all out for Halloween. I go hard for Halloween. I love it. But why don't people get actually scared? Like, why doesn't it bother anyone? And overwhelmingly, the answer keeps coming back that everybody knows it's fake. Right? It's like, but it looks really real. It looks great. And the students always say, yeah, it does, but it's still fake. We all know it's fake. And this is what I think we need to think about with social media. I think the filters that make people look better have to get so much better that they literally transform the person into somebody else. I think they need to get so good that I could take like a shot of myself in a swimsuit, right? Like my swim trunks. And I add a 6-pack, I add huge pecs and shoulders and, maybe make my neck thicker or something. I need to be able to do that instantaneously. And we're pretty much getting there. If I can do that, the beauty of having that power is that I would be able to post online this picture of me after having augmented it for 10 or 15 seconds, post it online, and it would be like dressing up for Halloween. It would look so good, and it would be so easy to do that people would realize, oh, this is fake. Like, these are all fake. Young women looking at pictures on the internet, or excuse me, not on the internet, but on social media like Instagram and stuff. Like, you go to the beach, so you're in the beach, my swimsuit. Everybody would know it's fake. And that would be wonderful. Nobody would think for a second anymore like, gosh, I don't look as good as that person, because they would all know. They would all know that that person's not real. They do. Okay, the person's Sarah. Okay, but you also know that Sarah has access to this filter that makes her look like some supermodel instantaneously. And Matt's not some roided out, jacked guy, but like instantaneously I look that way. I look awesome. It's just perfect. I look perfect. If we can get to that level, then we will give credit to Instagram on the level that we should be, which is just saying, hey, it's dress up. This isn't real. The problem is right now, we're not quite there yet. It's not easy enough yet. People are still laboring under the impression that it's like mostly real. No. Go all in. Go all in. Make the filters fantastic. Make them the best ever. Make them absurd. So we can get back to seeing each other not as these mostly perfect, modified, entities floating out in the cyber world. Make them perfect so we can get back to seeing each other as human beings. For all our flaws and silliness. We need to make social media a costume party. I'm Matt Todd, and this is the engine that drives me. Go out and crush it.